So hello everyone and welcome to Excel. This little video is going to give you a nice brief introduction into what Excel is and what it does, how it looks, what everything's called, things like that. So it's really just going to give you a crash course into using Excel for the first time. And you're going to see as you go on, it's actually very easy to use once you kind of figure out the bells and whistles and those basic functions. So we're going to be talking about the principles of spreadsheets. Okay, you might be familiar with Excel a little bit. It's a grid style spreadsheet, and we input some sort of data into that spreadsheet. We'll be looking at the Excel screen or window, whatever you want to call it, or even the Excel interface. Okay, what it looks like, what everything's called, where everything is found, things like that. So as we go through, you have a better understanding of what exactly I'm talking about as you do little exercises. We'll be entering and working with some data. We'll be performing some simple calculations. All right, this is really the heart of Excel. This is why we use Excel. We typically will input data, and then you perform calculations on that data to get answers. And we'll also be selecting ranges. Okay, so if you've used something like Microsoft Word before, you know that you often need to select or highlight text before you apply some sort of command. Excel is no different. Okay, we typically will have to select a number of values. Okay, ranges just means multiple values, and we need to select or highlight them before we can apply some sort of command. All right, so what you're looking at right here is your typical Excel spreadsheet. Now in Excel, we're calling them worksheets. All right, that's sort of the specific name that Excel is giving these. So we have a worksheet here, and when we save an Excel worksheet, we're actually saving what's called a workbook. Okay, so Excel calls the file a workbook, just like Microsoft Word calls their files documents or doc. Excel calls them workbooks, and we can have multiple worksheets in one workbook, which can be very helpful. Okay, so you can have one worksheet for expenses and one worksheet for profits, for example. Okay, and they can be saved in one file or one workbook. So what we're looking at here is an Excel worksheet. And as I said before, it's arranged in a grid style. So what we have on the horizontal axis is a row, okay? And we have a number of rows, and they're identified, as you can see, by numbers, okay? 1, 2, 3, etc. Okay, so the rows are the horizontal lines that are identified by numbers. Now on these vertical lines, okay, these are called columns, and they're identified by letter. So A, B, C, etc. So we have our horizontal rows and our vertical columns. And where those columns and rows intersect, okay, each of these little rectangles here is what we call a cell. All right, so this is our, this A1 cell is our active cell. Okay, we can tell the active cell because it is has a nice bold outline. And more importantly, what we call the column header and the row header are both highlighted. Okay, when we say header, we're just referring to the actual letter and the actual number here. So in this case, we would call this cell the A1 cell. Okay, whenever we refer to a cell, we refer to it by the column and then the row. And that's what we call a cell reference. So again, this would be called the A1 cell. Okay, A1, this would be B1, C1, C2, D2, D3, etc. Okay, so we're never referring to the cell by what's inside the cell. We're always referring to it by the reference, okay, the column and then the row, and you're going to see why that's very important. Now in Excel, we have a number of different cursors, and these are also good to know, okay, because they're going to kind of give you a hint as to what comes next. So in Excel, the one you're going to see the most often is the select cursor, okay, the big white plus sign. And this is what you use to select a cell or a range of cells, or again, that just means multiple cells. Okay, so when we're highlighting a cell, we're going to see that select cursor. So you're going to see this one most often, and you'll see it when you're pointing at a cell. Okay, now underneath the select cursor, we have a what's called the fill handle, or what I usually refer to as the little black plus sign. Okay, big white plus sign, a little black plus sign. And we will get that little black plus sign or fill handle when we point at the bottom right corner of a cell. So you can see where I'm pointing right here, there's a little square, a little box in the bottom right hand corner of the cell. okay? And when we point at that little box, we will get the fill handle right here. All right, now the fill handle is used to copy formulas or values from inside the cell to other cells. Okay, so for example, if I had a 3 in this cell, I could copy and paste that 3 into multiple cells instantly using that fill handle. All right, now when we start talking about formulas and calculations, you'll see that you can also apply calculations into multiple cells at once as well. All right, so big difference here. Okay, select cursor is dealing with the cell itself. Okay, you're selecting the entire cell. Fill handle is dealing with the contents inside the cell. All right, so I will point out those differences as we go on. Now down here we have an I-beam. All right, you've probably seen this before, and as usual, this is our indication that we can type in this area. So if you're about to type in a cell, you will see the I-beam, and you will also see this line here, okay, which is usually blinking. That's our insertion point, and that just means that we're ready to type inside the cell. Now underneath, we have two sets of two-headed arrows here. Okay, we have a horizontal one and a vertical one, and these are used to resize rows or columns. I should say columns or rows, and they're just sort of a quick way to do that. Okay, if we get to that, I will let you know to look out for those. Now, in each cell, there may be the following types of data. Okay, so we can have text data, and usually when we're talking about text data, we're referring to labels. Okay, column labels or row labels, and they're used to identify values. Okay, so for example, if I have a column of employee ID numbers, okay, at the top of that column, I will most likely have a cell that says employee ID number. Okay, so that would be an example of a text, some text data. All right. Now, of course, we will also have number data, and these are fixed specified values. So the specific employee ID numbers, okay, those would be numerical or number data. Fixed specified values. Now, in a cell, you might also have a formula, and these are mathematical equations that are performing calculations on those fixed specified values we just talked about. All right, so for example, the number of, if you have columns of different types of shoes that you sold, okay, you might be adding the number of each of those shoes, okay, to give you some sort of answer. All right, so in a cell, you might have a formula, again, performing calculations on that number data. So now in Excel, it's a little kind of backwards from what you're used to, but all formulas begin with the equal sign, okay? The equal sign is your way of telling Excel that you're about to perform a calculation. So when we type an equation, we do not type in the numbers. We enter the cell reference where the data is stored. Okay, so remember, before I just mentioned, we're not dealing with the number inside the cell. We're referring to the cell reference. Okay, things like A1, B2, C3, things like that. Okay, and I'll explain this in a little more detail in just a second. So when we change the numbers in any cell, the equation will be updated automatically upon the change or entry of any data that is referenced in the equation. So what does this all mean? Let's look at this. All right, so here we have a little snapshot of a worksheet with a couple data values. Now let's just imagine here that we have rows 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so we have rows 1, 2, and 3, columns D and E. So in this case, as you can see in cell E3, we're starting to put together a formula because there's my equal sign. So if I want to add these two values, 3 and 2, okay, I'm not going to put 3 plus 2 in my formula here. I'm going to use the cell references. So the formula will add the numbers 3 plus 2. The final formula will look like this, and here it is, equals E1 plus E2. Okay, E1 and then E2. Okay, we're always using the cell references in our formulas. Okay, there's a reason for that. Okay, and here it is up here, just another example. And then it's going to give you the answer here. Okay, the formula is in the cell, but it's after you put that formula in, it's going to show the answer. Okay, now the reason we use those cell references, as you because the formula will automatically update the answer if the data in cells E1 and E2 change. So in other words, if this 3, if I needed to change it to a 4, okay, this answer would automatically update to 6 because I use the cell references. So I can change these data values as many times as I need to in case something changes down the road, and I don't need to re-input or reapply this formula every single time. It just stays there and the answer updates automatically because I'm using the cell references. So let's look at this on a larger scale. On the left side here, we have our initial table. On the right side, we have our updated table or revised table. So on the left here, we see, I'll tell you that we have 3 formulas going on. Down here in cell B6, we have a formula that's adding up the quantities for each genre. Okay, and it's giving us our total for 66. We have a formula going on up here in cell D2 that's multiplying the quantity by the unit cost. Okay, and that's giving you your total cost right here. Now we have a third formula down here that's adding up all of these total costs to give us this answer. So we have a formula here, here, and down here in cell D6. Now, over here, let's say we update this quantity for classical to 30. What that means is that because we use those cell references in our equation, all of those answers will update automatically, as you can see. Okay, so it's including it in the new total CDs, it's including it in that new multiplication formula, and it's including it down here in the total cost for all of our, the grand total for all of our total costs per genre. Okay, so it's updating all 3 automatically. So spreadsheets allow you to organize information in tables. Okay, and more importantly, Excel provides the added bonus of automatic mathematics. Excel will keep track of the numbers you place in cells, and if you define cells to refer to each other, any changes made in one cell will be reflected in the referring cells. So again, we're always using the cell references. That's key. That's very important, and it will it enables you to change those, to update those formulas very quickly and instantly. All right, so that was your little brief intro into what Excel is, how it looks, what it does. So thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more.